So thanks for sending me these videos. You got a great foundation. The Tathata training's really helped you. Um, so I just want to look at a couple things. Take it kind of one step at a time. Your question with the driver was about, early extension. But before I get into that, I want to look at setup. So notice here, your left wrist is kind of caved in there a little bit. That left wrist isn't in a strong position. It's not in alignment with the left forearm. Where Rory's, you can see, is flatter so that this lines up better. And his hands are just slightly more forward. So getting that left wrist into alignment, getting the hands slightly forward will be the first thing that we look at. And your arms are a little bit over pressurized. I would say the left arm's a little rigid. The right arm's very locked out. So maybe soften your elbows a little bit at setup. Your arms are going to pressurize as you take the club away, but having them super rigid at setup doesn't allow for a lot of freedom to swing the golf club. Next thing I want to look at is I'd widen your stance just a touch. Notice your shoulders about in the middle of your foot, where Rory's is, obviously the camera angle is a little different, but it's a little bit wider base, slightly wider. It's a driver, so you need more stability. And then in terms of early extension, I want to show you this. So, got a great backswing. Okay, now notice Rory's hands are a touch higher, more above his head, more leverage. But the key here is, why does the pelvis start extending so soon? So I want to point out, look at where Rory's left shoulder is. Look at where your left shoulder is. Okay, now watch Rory. He's compressing down into this left hip. Getting strong into this left leg. And notice where his shoulder went. So by moving everything this way in transition, compresses into the stomach, compresses into the left hip, left shoulder goes down. Now when he levels out, he's lower, but he's in that left hip. And this left shoulder is quite a bit lower than it was at the top of the backswing. And that's a proponent of just being a really good player. Obviously, this is one step at a time, but how you attack the golf ball when you're a phenomenal player is different than how you attack the golf ball if you're a higher handicap. So notice that from the top of the backswing you go level, and then this left shoulder starts to raise. And that's because this left hip and pelvis is already starting to kick up in this direction. It never compressed down. So your shoulder went from here to here, where Rory's went this way as he compressed down before he explodes up. So he's essentially taken his extension and moved it to a later place in the golf swing by transitioning the way he does, where you kind of start extending from the top of the backswing. And if you do, there'll be a tendency to get the wrist angles going out in this direction, so you're dumping the club in this direction while you're popping your pelvis up in this direction. So you'll see if we look at the wrist angles here, Rory's able to keep a lot more pressure on the grip, a lot more pressure on the shaft, where you're kind of losing a lot of that, and the pelvis is already starting to kick up in your downswing, which it will, more with a driver than it will with a wedge, more with a driver than it will with a 7-iron. Just causes you to kind of be up on this, you're up on this left toe through the hit, and that's because everything's going that way. So then Rory, and think about how strong his left quad is right here. Now his pelvis starts to move up. Through the hip. So essentially, there's one other thing I wanted you to see. So setup, tweak setup a little bit. Just make it stronger, more athletic. Get that left wrist in a better spot. Then soften the arms a little bit. Then as you take the club away, I want you to look at where your eyes are looking. Okay, now you kind of, as you take it away, you watch the club head. Now your head's over here. So now you're having to look out of peripheral vision. So the ball's essentially moving when it shouldn't be. Now the head's gonna move a little bit as the left shoulder moves underneath it, which is fine, but yours, see the logo on your hat? As you take it away, now the logo on your hat's over here because you're kind of watching the club go away. You know, not a huge deal, but just something to pay attention to. I'd rather you be more solid there and let it happen naturally rather than watch it straight off the ball. So setup, left wrist, left arm, stance a little bit, and then I'll film more and more content on how to attack the ball better so that the pelvis is compressed before it extends and it just doesn't start popping out from the top of the backswing. So thanks, man. Hope this helps.